Shalom, I'm Rabbi Josh Caruso from Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple. It's really an honor for me, even though I don't want to be here, and I don't think anybody wants to be here to remember Nancy, and this we'd rather have her with us right now. But if we have to be here, I'm very honored to be part of this tribute to her life, especially because I know that Nancy and Elliot and their children really had a connection with Fairmount Temple. So it's special, at least, to sort of come full circle here and have that shared connection. In fact, I just showed Jennifer a picture of her confirmation picture from 19, which she actually was in the same class as my wife. So it is a very small world, but I'm glad that we were able to make that connection again. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing, a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking, a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with a recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Nancy's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. I invite you, if you wish, to join with me in the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There is a traditional prayer we sometimes share from the book of Proverbs of Eshet Chayil, which means a woman of valor. And for many, it could be interpreted as a bit of a misogynist piece, because we're talking about the woman and the wife and all the things she does in the home. But there's some really beautiful pieces of this that I think very much animate who Nancy was. What a precious find is an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband, Elliot, put his confidence in her, lacked no good thing. She was good to him, never bad all the days of her life. Nancy opened her hand to the needy, extended it to the poor. She was surely clothed with strength and splendor. She looked to the future cheerfully. She opened her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversaw the activities of her household, never ate the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband praises her and says many women have done superbly, but you, Nancy, surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. Share with you a modern meditation. After a while, you learn the subtle difference between holding a hand and chaining a soul. And you learn that love doesn't mean leaning, and that company doesn't always mean security. And you learn that kisses aren't contracts, and presents aren't promises. And you begin to accept your defeats with your head up and your eyes straight ahead, with the grace of a woman or a man, not the grief of a child. And you learn to build all your roads on today, because tomorrow's ground is too uncertain for plans, and futures have a way of falling down in mid-flight. After a while, you learn that even sunshine burns if you bask too much. So you plant your own garden, decorate your own soul, instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers. And you learn that you really can endure, and that you really are strong, and that you really have worth. And you learn, and you learn. With every goodbye, you learn. Just 3 days. 3 days after Yom Kippur, the Jewish festival of Sukkot began. And isn't that how the world turns? When one light descends, another light is born. The rhythms of the Jewish year bring us through the days of awe, and we pray that we are once again written and inscribed for at least one more year into the book of life. Immediately following Yom Kippur, the Jewish calendar thrusts us into Sukkot, the festival of booths. On Sukkot, we sit in the temporariness of a dwelling, resembling the capriciousness of life. And yet, with all the fragility that this festival represents, it also emphasizes joy. Sukkot is known as Zman Simchatenu, season of our joy. And when we think of Nancy and our encounters with her, we knew her to be joyful, pleasant, and kind. I know her sister Marcia, I know her daughter Jennifer would like to share some words with you now from their perspective.
I'm glad I'm speaking before and not after our radio personality. I am Marcia, but my real identity is Nancy's baby sister. That's how she introduced me when I was 4 years old, is in this picture, and that's how she introduced me when I was 40. Our mother wanted 2 children, 4 years apart, so she would have time to focus on the first before she diverted her attention to the second. Well, she had to, and she only missed the 4-year plan by 1 week. Nancy was born on April 23rd, 1940. I was born on April 16th, 1944. Birthday parties were a significant tradition in our family, and April was the birthday month. My mother, Nancy, and I have reminisced to the present about the annual birthday parties that my mother planned for us, and we each had our own birthday cake. As she was 4 years older than I, Nancy had a significant influence on me during our growing up in the small town of Butler, Pennsylvania. Some of my memories today are just as vivid as they were when they happened so many years ago. Nancy and I were always very close, 4 years apart, but both the center of our mother's life. So many of our activities were together. Sunday school, piano lessons, the many movies and theater tickets, and that special pizza dinner frequently when our mother had fish, which we both hated for my father. Nancy always had lots of friends, and lots of them were boys. She spent many school nights talking to them on the phone, and they were always welcome at our house. Often I was in the next room, peering around the corner so I could better see them and hear them. They had so much fun, and I was in awe. One Valentine's Day, when her boyfriend at the time brought a large box of chocolate Valentine candy for Nancy, he brought me a small box of candy, and I was so excited. I was the little sister. I can still name the records and albums that she had in high school, and to this day, I recognize that my love for Frank Sinatra, for the Four Freshmen, for the Hi-Los, were because of Nancy's influence on me when she was in high school. I think we all know about Nancy's love for clothes. My mother started this when, in our youth, she took us to Pittsburgh every year, frequently, several times a year, to shop at Kaufman's, Gimbels, and Horns for our clothes. But when Nancy was getting ready for her freshman year at Penn State, I wasn't invited to participate in that trip to Pittsburgh. No, Nancy was the focus. She needed a college wardrobe. And she came back with one, a large assortment of outfits that matched and were interchangeable. Blouses, skirts, sweaters, wow. I hadn't understood that this was an important part of college preparation. When she left for Penn State, I was very sad. It was a major adjustment for me to be the only child in the house. The house became much lonelier, quiet, fewer friends, and visits from friends. And I know that many of you here appreciate the attraction that Nancy had into the house and on the phone from friends. After her first year, she transferred to Pitt to be close to her boyfriend, and then we had an opportunity for our family to visit her many Sundays. When Nancy graduated, she began her long 2-year career in elementary education as I entered Carnegie Mellon University. And 3 months later, she met Elliot. Although she had a boyfriend at the time, Elliot swept her off her feet, and they were married the following summer. So now Nancy and Elliot included me in many of their outings, restaurants, clubs, etc. And I had 2 persons supporting me during my college days. The following year, Nancy stopped at my dorm one evening, grinning from ear to ear, to inform me that she was pregnant with David. And soon after, I had David, adding to my joy. 4 years after my graduation, Elliot and Nancy moved to Cleveland, where a more promising manufacturer's rep territory was available for Elliot, and this broke my mother's heart, as Nancy was now pregnant with Jennifer, and the 2 grandchildren would be leaving Pittsburgh. But then I was offered a promotion to Cleveland when I was with IBM. This was absolutely a gift from God. We were once again united. We all lived in Cleveland, and we stayed at Nancy's until our apartments were available. I was still single, but I was blessed with Nancy's family. And this lasted for 3.5 years, at which time I was offered another promotion with IBM back to Pittsburgh. So once again, I accepted. My mother's heart was broken, but we all made the trip from Pittsburgh to Cleveland and back many, many times over a 10-year period. In 1984, my mother passed away from a heart attack. She was 1 month younger than Nancy was at the time of her death last week. Both had lived a full life devoted to their beloved children, with constant mention of their love for their children, for their family. Sylvia and Nancy, we love you more.
I'm Jennifer, for those of you that don't know me. And that's my Uncle Frank. And I'm pretty tired. I've done a lot of traveling, and I had to clean out her closet. So that alone is exhausting, as you heard my aunt talk about. So Dee, Marlene, Beth, her closest friends, of course my aunt, we've all had poems for my mother, because a lot of you don't know, my mom was a poet, and she was pretty darn good. They were simple, they weren't deep. I'm not going to say sort of like her, because she was not simple, and she did have depth, but her poems were so brilliant in such a simple way. So she sort of gave that to me. And I've always been so jealous of people that can write this deep, deep poetry. But those of you that have had birthdays that are in her life have all received a poem from my mother. And so my poem to you, Mom, is: my little sweet mother has just passed away. My biggest fear has come. This is the day. Sweet little Nancy, who was always so fancy. Mom, you must know how we all loved you so. From music to shopping, that was your thing. Life to the party is what you would always bring. The angels in heaven have taken you from me. I passed you to them, so now you're flying free. And that is a Nancy Saltsburg poem, if I've ever heard one. And I think that she channeled me as I wrote that one. I have a whole eulogy here that I wrote. I'm not even going to do it. just going to say, how do you say goodbye to someone like my mom? You can't. You can't possibly say goodbye. Her spirit is just simply too strong. And we're all going to feel that spirit, I'm sure. My mother had a love for music, and I know that that's where I got my love for music, and I know that that's where my brother got his love for music. It was always jazz, jazz, jazz. As a matter of fact, if you'd like to break into her email or anything that was hers, I guarantee you the password was jazz. So she had such a love for music. Last January, and fashion, I had to go to a concert, and I was doing something for work for an internet radio show, and I had no one to go with. And last minute, I'm like, Mom, do you want to go? Of course, she was like, of course I want to go. It's a blues concert. Turned out it wasn't so much. It was more of a rock concert, but it was outside. And she shows up with heels this high, okay, 6-inch heels to an outdoor, concert. And she fell and she broke her hip. She wasn't exactly, since that accident, ever really the same. However, the broken hip had to do with her love for fashion and her love for taking care of other people and being codependent, because she was chasing me because somebody wanted to take a picture of me. She also, by the way, escorted me to the Pearl Jam concert. And my mom knew more about rock and roll than probably your typical contemporary, young contemporary. Another love for me, listening to me. And as a result of listening to me on rock radio, she knew everything about every band. So when my husband last minute couldn't go to the show, my mom was right there next to me, escorting me, and we sat down next to these cute boys, and she was like, look how cute they are. And I'm like, yeah, well, I have to go up front. I have to make my way up front because these tickets are terrible. She's like, I'll be just fine with these boys. So she sat next to the boys, and she complained that she hated Pearl Jam and she wished it was Nirvana. And then after that, I joined her at a jazz concert. And I don't have a huge love for jazz. But the thing about my mom and I were, it doesn't matter where we were, what we were doing, as long as we were together. My mom and I were soulmates. I never had a soulmate in this life, really. People think the opposite sex is a soulmate. My soulmate was my mother, Nancy Saltsburg. And there was no way that you could ever describe the relationship. I had somebody that just was spending some time with me, and she was trying to explain to people that didn't know us, you will never understand the dynamics of this relationship unless you've seen it. The closeness. We were an extension of one another. Basically, she was me and I was her, which kept a lot of therapists in business. Nancy was tired. I really believe that Nancy was tired. She was tired of taking care of everybody else. And I think that she just wanted her time. I think that she knew that I was okay. And I think she wanted to believe that my brother was going to be okay. And I think that she was just ready. She wanted to fly with the angels. She wanted to be with her mother. Maybe or maybe not my father. Maybe one of those high school boyfriends, but definitely she's with someone up there. So she was tired, and I believe that she left this place knowing that we were going to be okay. And Mom, I'm going to honor you for the rest of my life here. I'm going to tell you with sobriety, strength, and grace. And that is my word to you. And Nancy, I always thought that I would break. I always thought that I would fall apart when you left this earth. But you're by my side every second, and I'm not going to let your life be in vain. And I'm going to just take everything that you gave me and put it into life and practice all of your practice everything that you've taught me and everything that you wanted me to be. Unfortunately, you're going to have to see it from up there. You are definitely unforgettable, Mom. I love you. And I'm going to miss you. But you're always here. Thank you.
Even the prophets in the Bible, the great rabbis of the past, knew how much people suffer. And they go through heartache. And sometimes people have more heartache than others. And it's not always equitable. And but our prophets and the rabbis, they really try to speak to all of us who suffer, who feel lost, who want to be found again, who want to be strengthened again. In Isaiah chapter 40, it is the prophet Isaiah who assures the people that even though they may feel lost, that there will be redemption. Sometimes we feel hidden from God. Sometimes we feel ignored. But Isaiah writes, God never grows faint or weary. God's wisdom cannot be fathomed. God gives strength to the weary, fresh vigor to the spent. Youths may grow faint and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But they who trust in the Lord shall renew their strength as eagles grow new plumes. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall march and not grow faint. That we will once again be lifted up even if we feel very low, even if we feel we've been kicked in the gut, and that there is no tomorrow. God will strengthen us. Just as we are weak on Yom Kippur, we suffer, and we share our sins with God. On Sukkot, this season of our joy, we build these booths that remind us that we are still here. Life is still with us. We must engage in the business of life and emerge from our sadness and grief to know that there will be another day and to carry our loved ones with us. For they don't disappear just because they physically die, because the body in which they lived is buried and gone. Their memory remains. Nancy's memory, her character was so buoyant that it can't be easily forgotten. She loved people. She loved her family. She loved greeting life with a smile. She was interested in people. She was curious about them. She made others feel important. This wasn't just a, hello, how you doing? And not really waiting for the answer. This was a true interest in others. There were so many people in her life who knew her, these ancillary people one might think on the surface. People like the mail carrier, people who are friends of Jennifer, or people that she went to visit to have her nails done or her hair done. These people cared about her and were exceedingly forlorn when they heard about Nancy's passing. Oh, she loved fashion, dressing up, getting her hair and nails done, and yes, those high heels, of course, matching with her purse. Jennifer, you called her a fashionista. In Judaism, when we think of something that accentuates something else, particularly a mitzvah, there's actually a phrase we use for it. It's called hidor mitzvah, a beautification of the commandment, a flourish, something that just makes it even more beautiful. They actually call hidor mitzvah, when you look at the Torah and you see the Hebrew letters and you see these crowns on the Hebrew letters, that's hidor mitzvah. That's a flourish. It's not just the Hebrew letter. We're seeing something deeper and much more beautiful. That was Nancy. Hidor mitzvah, beautifying everything. That was ordinary. Accentuating the meaning of a moment, genuinely lifting up the mundane, making it special and noteworthy. Just like we do with the fragility of that sukkah, with that temporary hut that we build. We adorn it with beauty, and we love to show God how important these rituals are in Jewish life. After the lowest point of recognizing our own mortality on Yom Kippur, we get up and we build and we rebuild and we beautify. We double down on life. This is where we are. We still have days here on this earth. And Nancy adorned life in other ways. She indeed was a poet, and she had a special way with words. She loved to garden. She had a green thumb. And probably her greatest joy and achievement was the way in which she beautified her relationship with her family, with, of course, her sister, her kids, and her grandson, Hunter. Hunter was her world. And the two of them spent countless time together when he would come over for sleepovers. By the way, I'm emphasizing, because when I spoke to Marlene, she shared that too, just how important Hunter was. Their relationship was extraordinarily loving. Hunter's life will forever be intertwined and touched because Nancy was in it. Probably in ways Hunter doesn't realize right now, but embedded in his soul. Nancy, born and raised in Butler, Pennsylvania, was very close, as Marcia shared with her loving sister. And yes, Marcia, you did admire your sister. You remembered how Nancy was the social hub of the house, and that it was way back then that it became clear that she was free-spirited and the active social butterfly that defined her. Jennifer pointed out that her mom always admired Marcia too. And even though you two sisters were separate and distinct individuals, you both shared a mutual respect. And after high school, Nancy began teaching after attending Penn State and Pitt and met Elliot. And I hear he was quite a character too. I guess that resonated. May his memory be for a blessing. And yes, Elliot got that job here too, and unfortunately he died far too early. They brought two children, Jennifer and David, into this world. And Nancy prided herself on being a mother and a wife. Never stopped engaging, though, in hobbies. Shopping, yoga and Pilates, and canasta, that jazz music, TV, Law and Order, The Bachelor, American Idol, all those award shows that she loved. She certainly exercised her entrepreneurial side with some businesses that she would engage in. She loved animals and plants, and of course, she loved people. She was blessed to have Marcia here in town for a while, and her mom too, and for whom she cared. And Nancy and Jennifer, you two indeed were there for each other, an extension of one another as you shared, supporting one another through the challenges and trials and joys of your lives. You relied on one another, showed each other unconditional love. What a gift, Jennifer, that you had with your mom, and so many people would desire to have with their parent. We know how grateful you are that you had that time with her. We know how much you pay tribute to her today. We also acknowledge the uncommon and unparalleled friendships Nancy shared with her very good friends Dee Kleinman, Marlene Mayers, who are here today. They share feelings of gratitude for having had Nancy in their lives. And Marlene told me that if everyone was like Nancy, the world would be a better place. She always thought of others, cared about how others felt and what they thought, and sometimes she would even obsess about them, feeling bad if she sent a birthday card that arrived just one day late. She was that kind of person, thoughtful, loving, caring toward every individual in her life. And today, as we continue to observe Chag HaSukkot, the festival of Sukkot, we do acknowledge the fragility of life and the God who renews us for blessing, sometimes through the loving and caring souls who are put before us. Sometimes we are truly gifted with magical individuals who boost us, who give us that piece that we're missing, the piece of the puzzle that we search for, that we can't imagine living without. Nancy was one of those souls. So at this time, as we dwell in the sukkah, we ask God to protect us, to shelter us. We also, when we dwell in that sukkah, it is traditional to welcome guests in your sukkah. But not just guests who are here today, sharing a meal with them, but actually it's traditional to welcome guests of past generations. Yes, Abraham and Sarah, the rabbis of old, and also our loved ones, those who cannot be with us physically anymore, but who are in spirit with us. And so let us do that as we dwell in the sukkah. If you build one, even if you don't, in your proverbial sukkah, in your symbolic sukkah, in the sukkah that you're dwelling in right now, invite her in. Let's invite Nancy. Let's invite the memories. She'll probably show up with the heels. She'll probably show up looking really wonderful and fantastic, dressed to the nines. She'll show up and she'll be asking, "How are you?" and immediately engaging in conversation, acknowledging you and showing that she cares about you, that you are important. Let's invite her into our sukkah. Zichrona livracha. May her memory, may her soul forever be a blessing. And let us say, Amen. Let's pause for a few moments as we consider Nancy's life and the gifts she brought to each one of us. We invite you to rise for El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Bemalot Kedoshim Utoharim, Kezohar Rakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat Nancy Mae Saltsburg shalcha leolama begaden Eden tehei menuchata ana barachamim hastireha beseter knafecha leolamim utzror bitzror achayim et nishmata Adonai unachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. Amalei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Nancy Saltsburg, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We now turn to the mourner's Kaddish. I believe Marcia and Jennifer, if you have a card with you, you can recite the blessing. I'll recite it with you together. You could just look on with Marcia, Jen. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'olam alomeo maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh.